The Mid-Ohio Valley Regional Airport is seeking a federal grant that, if approved, could pave the way for thousands of jobs across our region. Our Thomas Chase talked with airport manager Ben Auville and has more.
The Mid-Ohio Valley Regional Airport recently applied for a federal EDA grant, which, if approved, is one step towards creating potentially upwards of 3,000 jobs to us here in the Mid-Ohio Valley. The EDA grant will help to upgrade the airport's fire water system. This is part of the airport's industrial park concept. The airport can only construct buildings upwards of 12,000 square feet due to current fire code. The grant will help to upgrade the fire water system and allow the construction of structures up and beyond 50,000 square feet. Ben Auville is the airport manager for the Mid-Ohio Valley Regional Airport.
What the grant is targeted on doing is working on infrastructure. So right now we have a lot of interest in development here at the airport, and it's not just one entity. We've had 13 companies last summer look at us, and they're international companies that are looking at various types of aircraft manufacturing activities.
The airport is looking to redevelop the land to the east of runway 3 towards the southwest of the airport terminal. Auville says that aircraft manufacturers have been interested at manufacturing planes and drones at the airport. The airport's industrial park concept, if completed, plans to support around 3,000 jobs to our region.
It can vary, so it depends on the activity. So some of these could be very intensive, and not all those jobs necessarily going to be here at the airport. So like if you look at what Clarksburg's done over the last couple of decades, there's jobs at the airport, but there's many, many more jobs that support them that are off-site. So a lot of the assembly stuff happens on-site at the airport, and you have this bigger footprint off the airport. And that's kind of what we're driving towards now.
Auville says that many airlines fly overseas to repair aircraft, and the MOV Regional Airport sits at a very convenient spot for airlines to not have to travel internationally. And to do that, operations at the airport need to be running 24/7.
Because most of these operations, when you have an aircraft come in, that aircraft, it's not making money while it's being worked on. So they don't just, hey, we're going to go here and let it park overnight. They run 24/7, a lot of the operations here. So we were looking at different levels of manufacturing there, different levels of assembly, but again, you look at what's available, who's ready to come here.
Auville says that the grant needs to make it through next year's federal budget and that it typically takes around 1 year to hear back. In Williamstown, I'm Thomas Chase with WTAP News. This is Home.